The morning sky over New Horizon burned with 3 suns, painting the colonial capital in shades of gold and amber. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the defense station, watching the city below prepare for another peaceful day. 2 million colonists lived here, farming the rich soil and mining the precious metals that made New Horizon humanity's crown jewel among the stars. She sipped her coffee and smiled. 20 years she had served in the Colonial Defense Force, and not once had she fired a weapon in anger. Humanity had spread across the stars in peace, building homes on distant worlds and greeting the silence of space with hope rather than fear. The alarm shattered that peace. Sarah's coffee cup fell from her hands as the sensors screamed. Something massive was dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Not one ship, not 10, hundreds of vessels, each larger than anything humanity had ever built, materialized in formations that spoke of military precision. "Get me Earth Command," Sarah ordered, racing to her station. Her fingers flew across the controls, but the communications array was already flooding with emergency signals from the outer defense platforms. The first platform died before it could fire a shot. A beam of purple energy so bright it hurt to look at simply erased it from existence. Then another platform died, and another. "They're not even slowing down," her tactical officer whispered, his face pale. "Our shields. They're passing through our shields like they're not even there." Sarah watched the alien fleet advance like a tide of death. Their ships were black and sharp, covered in angles that seemed wrong somehow, as if they existed partially outside normal space. She had studied every known alien species in the colonial database. These matched nothing on file. "Launch everything," she commanded. "Every fighter, every missile, every drone we have." New Horizons defenders rose to meet the invaders. Fighters screamed into space, their pilots shouting battle cries that humanity had not needed for 200 years. Missiles streaked toward the enemy fleet in swarms of fire and fury. The alien ships swatted them aside like insects. Their weapons carved through human fighters with casual ease, and their shields absorbed missile strikes without even flickering. In 15 minutes, New Horizons' entire orbital defense force was destroyed. Then the aliens began landing. Drop pods fell like meteor showers, slamming into the ground around every major city. Sarah watched through satellite feeds as the pods opened and things emerged. They walked on 4 legs but stood upright on 2 when they wanted height. Their bodies were covered in armor that seemed to be part of their skin, dark plates that gleamed like oil. They carried weapons that hummed with power. The Zhenval, they called themselves. Humanity would learn that name in the hours to come, learn it in screams and blood and fire. They moved through the cities with terrible efficiency. No warnings, no negotiations, no mercy. Citizens who ran were cut down. Those who hid were dragged out. The Zhenval harvested technology from the factories, stripped the warehouses of supplies, and executed anyone who resisted. Sarah ordered her remaining crew to evacuate the station. "Get to the surface," she told them. "Hide in the mountains, survive." Most of them refused to leave. They were soldiers, they said, even if they had never seen real war. They would fight. Sarah recorded one final message while the others prepared the station's self-destruct sequence. The Zhenval would not take their command center intact. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of New Horizon Defense Station," she spoke into the recorder, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "At 0900 hours local time, an alien force of unknown origin attacked our system without provocation. They have destroyed our defenses and begun ground assault on all population centers. Current casualty estimates," her voice broke. "Current estimates are 90% civilian losses. They're not taking prisoners. They're exterminating us." An explosion rocked the station. The Zhenval were boarding. "We fought," Sarah continued, gripping the edge of her console. "We threw everything we had at them. It wasn't enough. These aliens, they have weapons we can't counter. Technology we don't understand. They're taking our resources and killing anyone who gets in their way." Gunfire echoed in the corridors outside. Her remaining crew was making their last stand. "Earth needs to know," Sarah said, tears flowing freely now. "They're coming. After they finish here, they'll move to the next colony and the next, and eventually they'll reach the home system. Don't let our deaths be meaningless. Don't let them catch you unprepared. And for God's sake, don't try to negotiate. These things don't want peace. They want everything we have, and they'll walk over our corpses to take it." The door exploded inward. Zhenval warriors poured into the command center, their weapons raised. Sarah hit the transmission button with one hand and armed the self-destruct with the other. New Horizon is lost, she said as the aliens opened fire. Avenge us. The message shot into space on a tight beam transmission, racing toward Earth at faster than light speeds. Sarah Chen's last act was to smile at the aliens as the station's reactor went critical. The explosion vaporized the command center and took 3 Genval assault ships with it. It was a tiny victory against an overwhelming force, but it was something. On the planet below, New Horizon burned. By sunset, the 3 suns looked down on a world of the dead. The Genval commander, War Premier Thexkor, stood in the ruins of the capital and felt satisfied. These humans had been weak, their defenses pitiful, their resistance meaningless. He sent his report to the collective. Humanity was soft prey, easy to harvest. They would sweep through the human colonies like fire through paper, taking what they needed and leaving nothing behind. Thexkor had made many conquests in his long career. He had crushed dozens of species beneath the might of the Genval collective. But this was the first time he had made a fatal mistake. He had attacked Earth's children and assumed the parent would be just as weak. In the cold void of space, Sarah Chen's message continued its journey home, carrying with it the death scream of an entire world and a warning that would change everything. The peaceful era of humanity was over. What came next would remind the galaxy why humans had once been very, very good at war. The message from New Horizon arrived at Earth Command at 3 a.m, Greenwich time. Within minutes, alarms were screaming across every military installation on the planet. Within an hour, the United Earth Council was assembling an emergency session. Within 3 hours, the entire solar system knew that humanity was at war. Admiral James Blackwood watched Sarah Chen's final message for the 7th time, his weathered face carved from stone. He sat in the operations center buried 2 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, surrounded by screens showing data that made his blood run cold. New Horizon was gone. 3 other colonies had stopped transmitting. Signal probes sent to investigate had simply vanished. 4 worlds, said Secretary General Martinez, her holographic image flickering above the conference table. 4 worlds and over 8 million people just gone in less than 72 hours. The council chamber erupted in shouting. Some demanded immediate military response. Others insisted on attempting diplomatic contact. A few suggested evacuating the outer colonies and retreating to the Sol system's defenses. Blackwood let them argue. He had heard these same debates 200 years ago, when humanity had first reached for the stars. Back then, the question had been simple. Do we go into space as warriors or as explorers? They had chosen explorers. They had chosen peace, and Blackwood had spent his entire career preparing for the day that choice came back to haunt them. Enough, he said quietly. The room fell silent. Blackwood had that effect on people. At 70 years old, he looked like he had been carved from the same mountains that hid his command center. His gray eyes had seen things most people preferred to forget. We have a response ready, Blackwood continued. We've had it ready for 150 years. It's time to wake up the contingency fleet. The silence that followed was absolute. The contingency fleet is a myth, someone said. A story to scare politicians into funding defense budgets. Blackwood smiled without humor. That's what we wanted everyone to think. He entered a command code into his terminal. All around the solar system, hidden facilities began to stir. In the asteroid belt, massive hangar doors opened on installations that official records claimed were mining stations. Inside those hangars sat warships, hundreds of them, built in secret over decades. They had no names, only designation numbers. They had been constructed by automated factories far from prying eyes, their existence known only to a select few. On Mars, deep beneath Olympus Mons, the weapons laboratories came online. Scientists who had spent their careers studying theoretical warfare suddenly found their theories becoming very real. Projects that had been filed under academic exercise were now being loaded into missile silos. In orbit around Jupiter, the construction yards that supposedly built cargo haulers revealed their true purpose. The frames hanging in those yards were not merchant vessels. They were dreadnoughts, battle carriers, and assault ships designed for one purpose, to kill efficiently and in vast numbers. When we went to the stars, Blackwood told the stunned council, we made a promise to ourselves. We would be peaceful. We would be explorers. We would be the best version of humanity we could imagine. He pulled up schematics of the contingency fleet. But we also remembered our history. We remembered that peace is a choice, and sometimes others don't let you keep choosing it. The ships appearing on the screens were nightmares made of metal and purpose. They had no comfort features, no civilian accommodations, no wasted space. Every centimeter was dedicated to weapons, shields, engines, and the crew needed to operate them. Project Hellfire, Blackwood continued, highlighting a weapons system. Plasma lances that burn at 12 million degrees. They'll cut through any known shielding like it's not there. Another schematic appeared. Project Reaper, swarm missiles with distributed AI. They learn from each other in real time, adapting to enemy tactics faster than any organic mind can process. More images flickered past. Kinetic kill vehicles that could crack planets. Biological agents that had been designed and then locked away. Electronic warfare systems that could turn an enemy's own technology against them. And more, much more, weapons that humanity had designed in its dark moments and then hidden away, hoping never to use. "You built all this in secret?" Martinez whispered. "For 150 years? "We didn't build it alone," Blackwood replied. "Every nation contributed. Every major corporation. We all agreed on one thing: hope for peace but prepare for war. The colonists got to live their peaceful lives because people like me stayed back here, making sure we could protect them if we needed to. And we failed them," someone said bitterly. "No," Blackwood's voice was hard. "They failed themselves by thinking the universe cared about their good intentions. But we won't fail them again." He stood, his posture straight despite his years. "The Genval made a mistake. They judged us by our colonies, by our peaceful expansion, by our 200 years without war. They thought we were weak because we chose not to fight." The Admiral pulled up a historical database, images of Earth's bloody past flickering across the screens, ancient battles, world wars, genocides, and horrors that had driven humanity to finally unite and reach for the stars. "We're not weak," Blackwood said. "We're recovering. We've been in therapy for 2 centuries, trying to be better than we were. But the thing about therapy is that it doesn't make you forget who you were. It just teaches you to control it." He entered another command. Across Earth, factory complexes began retooling. Civilian production lines shut down. War production ramped up. Billions of people received mobilization notices, calling them to report for duties they had trained for but never expected to perform. "The Genval wanted to see what humans do when cornered," Blackwood said. "They wanted to know what we're capable of when someone threatens our families, our homes, our children. They're about to find out." On the screens, the contingency fleet was already moving, emerging from hiding like sharks sensing blood in the water. Volunteer crews were boarding the vessels, men and women who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come. "We're not going to just defend ourselves," Blackwood told the Council. "We're going to make them regret they ever heard the word human. We're going to hit them so hard that every species in the galaxy will think twice before threatening us, and we're going to do it with every dirty trick, every brutal tactic, and every weapon we swore we'd never use again." He looked at each council member in turn, because that's what humans do when you kill our children. We don't forgive. We don't forget. And we sure as hell don't surrender. The council voted unanimously for war. Admiral Blackwood walked to the operations center's main viewport, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Genval were celebrating their easy victories, confident in their superiority. Let them celebrate, Blackwood thought. Let them feel safe, because very soon, they're going to learn why humanity spent 200 years running away from itself. The sleeping giant was awake, and it was very, very angry. The Genval fleet moved through space like a storm of locusts, confident and unstoppable. War Premier Thexcor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. 4 human colonies crushed, their resources stripped, their populations eliminated. Now his fleet was advancing toward the humans' home system, ready to tear out the heart of this weak species. "They haven't even sent scouts to investigate," his tactical officer reported. "No probe ships, no reconnaissance. These humans are either paralyzed with fear or too stupid to understand what's coming." Thexcor's mandibles clicked in amusement. "They are prey animals pretending to be spacefarers. We will harvest their homeworld and move on to more challenging conquests." The fleet entered the Terminus system, a region of scattered asteroids and dead planets halfway between the destroyed colonies and Earth. It was a perfect ambush site, but the Genval weren't worried. The humans had shown no tactical capability, no military strength worth mentioning. That confidence died the moment the asteroids started moving. Admiral Blackwood watched from the bridge of the EDF Retribution as his trap sprang shut. The contingency fleet had been hiding in the asteroid field for 3 days, their hulls cold and silent, indistinguishable from the rocks around them. Now at his command they came alive. "All ships," Blackwood said calmly. "Fire at will." 300 warships emerged from hiding simultaneously. The Genval fleet found itself surrounded by vessels that had been designed for exactly this moment. No warning shots. No attempts at communication. Just immediate, overwhelming violence. The first salvo caught the alien fleet completely off guard. Hellfire plasma lances, burning hotter than any natural star, carved through Genval shields like they were made of paper. The aliens' energy barriers, which had shrugged off colonial defenses, simply couldn't handle the focused fury of weapons humanity had spent a century and a half perfecting. Genval ships began exploding, their reactors overloading as human weapons found every weak point in their designs. "They're trying to return fire," the tactical officer reported. "Our shields are holding," Blackwood nodded. Human shields were different. Where the colonies had used standard energy barriers, the contingency fleet used layered defense systems. Energy shields backed by electromagnetic fields backed by physical armor. It was redundant, wasteful, and absolutely necessary. A Genval beam weapon struck the Retribution's shields. The first layer failed, but the second held long enough for the third to compensate. The ship barely shook. "Deploy Reaper swarms," Blackwood ordered. Across the human fleet, missile bays opened. What emerged wasn't like any missile the Genval had encountered. The Reaper swarms were thousands of small drones, each barely larger than a fist, each connected to its fellows through a distributed AI network. They moved like schools of fish, like flocks of birds, with a coordination that seemed impossible. The swarms hit the Genval fleet like a plague. Individual drones were easy to shoot down, but there were too many and they learned from every loss. When the aliens adapted their point defense to target the swarms adapted their approach vectors. When the Genval ships tried to run, the swarms predicted their movements and cut them off, and every drone that connected exploded with enough force to breach hull armor. Thexcor watched in growing horror as his fleet, which had seemed invincible against the colonies, was being torn apart. "How?" he demanded. "Where did they get these weapons? Where did these ships come from?" His tactical officer had no answers. The human vessels were appearing in the database now, their signatures being analyzed by the collective's war computers. The results made no sense. These ships were old, some of them bearing construction dates from over a century ago. The humans had been building a war fleet for generations while pretending to be peaceful explorers. "They tricked us," Thexcor realized. "The colonies were bait. They wanted us to think them weak." A new weapon emerged from the human lines. Fighters, but not like any the Genval had seen. They moved with impossible precision, taking risks no living pilot would take, pulling maneuvers that should have killed any organic crew, because the pilots were already dead. Project Lazarus, the humans called it. Terminally ill volunteers had their consciousness uploaded into fighter craft, given one last chance to serve humanity. They felt no pain, needed no life support, and had no fear of death because they were already dying. They were ghosts in machines, and they flew like demons. The uploaded pilots screamed through the Genval formations, their weapons tearing into the larger ships. When their ammunition ran out, they simply rammed the enemy vessels, their final sacrifice taking Genval ships with them into the void. "All ships retreat," Thexcor ordered. Pride was worth nothing if the fleet was destroyed. Back to the rally point. But Blackwood had predicted this. As the Genval fleet tried to disengage, they found their faster-than-light drives weren't working. The humans had deployed something new, a field generator that disrupted the quantum mechanics necessary for FTL travel. The Genval were trapped and the humans showed no mercy. For 6 hours, the Battle of Terminus raged. It was brutal, ugly, and efficient. The humans fought with a cold fury that spoke of long practice and careful planning. Every tactic they used had been tested, refined, and optimized for maximum lethality. When the Genval tried to use their superior numbers to overwhelm individual human ships, the humans simply had those ships self-destruct, taking multiple enemy vessels with them. When the aliens attempted to use their more powerful weapons, they found the humans had already analyzed their technology from the colonial battles and developed countermeasures. The Genval weren't fighting explorers or merchants. They were fighting a species that had spent thousands of years learning how to kill its own kind efficiently. Every lesson learned in Earth's bloody history, every tactic from every war humanity had ever fought, was being applied against them. By the time Blackwood finally let them go, Thexcor had lost a third of his fleet. The War Premier's flagship limped away from the battle, damaged and burning, its crew traumatized by what they had witnessed. "Send a message to the collective," Thexcor ordered, his voice hollow. "We have made a grave error. The humans are not prey. They are predators who learn to hide their teeth." His communications officer's hands shook as he composed the message. "What do we tell them, War Premier?" Thexcor looked at the tactical display, watching the human fleet regroup. They weren't celebrating their victory or tending their wounded first. They were already preparing for the next engagement, already analyzing the battle data, already adapting. "Tell them the truth," Thexcor said. "These creatures don't fight wars to win territory or resources. They fight wars to make sure the enemy can never threaten them again. They don't want victory. They want elimination." The message was sent racing back to Genval space ahead of the fleeing fleet. On the Retribution, Admiral Blackwood reviewed the battle reports. Human casualties were significant. 42 ships destroyed, thousands of crew dead. But they had proven what they needed to prove. Humans could bleed the Genval. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, "the enemy is retreating back toward our former colonies. Should we pursue?" Blackwood thought about Sarah Chen, about the 2 million dead on New Horizon, about the 8 million total who had died in the first attacks. He thought about the message the Genval needed to receive. "Yes," he said, "we pursue, and we don't stop until they understand what they started." The contingency fleet began its advance, following the wounded Genval like wolves tracking injured prey. The Battle of Terminus was over, but the war was just beginning, and humanity was done being peaceful. The human fleet didn't stop at Terminus. They pursued the fleeing Genval like a tide of vengeance, reclaiming the destroyed colonies one by one, and at each world, they found horrors that transformed their military campaign into something darker. Admiral Blackwood stood in what had been a school on New Horizon. The building was mostly intact, which made it worse. The Genval had used it as a sorting facility. Humans with useful skills had been separated from those without. The useful ones were put to work in the factories until they died of exhaustion. The others were simply killed. "Sir," one of his Marines called out, "you need to see this." In the basement, they found the laboratories. The Genval had been conducting experiments, testing human physiology, seeing how much pain the species could endure, how they responded to various stimuli. The bodies of children were still strapped to examination tables. Blackwood walked out of that building a different man than the one who had entered. The cold military professional who fought because it was necessary became something harder, something that scared even his own crew. "New orders," he said quietly. "We don't accept Genval surrender. We don't take prisoners, and we make sure every species in the galaxy knows what happens when you hurt human children." The pursuit continued, and humanity unveiled weapons they had hoped never to use. At the colony of Far Haven, the Genval had fortified themselves in the underground cities using human survivors as shields. Standard weapons couldn't dig them out without killing the hostages, so the humans deployed the nanoplague. It was a swarm of microscopic machines smaller than bacteria that could distinguish Genval biology from human. They were programmed with one instruction: consume Genval organic matter and replicate. The swarm was released into the underground city's ventilation system. The Genval died screaming as the nanomachines devoured them from the inside out, dissolving their organs while leaving the human hostages completely untouched. It took 6 hours for the fortress to fall silent. When human troops entered, they found thousands of human survivors standing among piles of gray sludge that had once been their captors. One of the survivors, a woman who had watched her family executed, looked at the Marine who helped her out and asked, "What did you do to them?" The Marine's face was expressionless. "We reminded them why Earth invented the concept of war crimes, by being willing to commit them." At the Jeremiah Station, a massive space station that the Genval had converted into a military base, the humans deployed gravitational weapons. They created a small temporary black hole right next to the station, letting physics do the work. The station and everything in it was compressed into a point smaller than an atom before the black hole evaporated. 20,000 Genval died in seconds. On Earth, Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the war reports with growing horror. She was one of the original designers of the contingency fleet, a physicist who had spent her career developing theoretical weapons. Now those theories were killing on a massive scale. We're becoming monsters, she told the council. We're using weapons that violate every ethical guideline humanity established after the last World War. Secretary General Martinez looked exhausted. What choice do we have? They killed 8 million of us. They're still holding 3 colonies hostage. They've made it clear they won't stop until every human is dead or enslaved. So we become them? Elena demanded. We become the species that uses planet-cracking weapons and biological warfare. We become the species that survives, Martinez replied. The debate raged on Earth while the fleet continued its advance. Public opinion was divided. Some demanded total destruction of the Genval. Others argued for proportional response. But everyone agreed on one thing. The Genval had awakened something in humanity that had been sleeping for 200 years. War Premier Thexcor retreated to the Cronus Nebula, a dense stellar nursery where sensors didn't work well. His fleet was down to 40% of its original strength. The collective was sending reinforcements, but they would take weeks to arrive. He knew the humans wouldn't give him weeks. They're here, his tactical officer reported as human ships began emerging from the nebula's gases. But this time Thexcor was ready. The nebula's dense matter would interfere with the humans' advanced sensors and weapons. His fleet was dug in, positioned perfectly for ambush, and he had one advantage the humans didn't know about. The collective's reinforcements had arrived early. The battle that followed was the bloodiest yet. The Genval fought with desperate fury, knowing this was their last stand. The humans fought with cold efficiency, treating the battle like a problem to be solved rather than a war to be won. Admiral Blackwood watched as his casualties mounted. The Genval had learned from their defeats, adapted their tactics. They were fighting smarter now, using the terrain to their advantage. Admiral, his communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Genval flagship. They want to negotiate surrender. Blackwood remembered New Horizon, remembered Far Haven, remembered the children strapped to laboratory tables. Tell them no, he said. Sir, Dr. Vasquez's voice came through on a priority channel from Earth. I'm monitoring the battle. The Genval are beaten. They're offering surrender. You have to accept it. I don't have to do anything except finish what they started, Blackwood replied. You're not a murderer, James, Elena said. I've known you for 30 years. You're better than this. They killed 8 million humans. They tortured our people. They used our children as lab experiments. Blackwood's voice was ice. I'm exactly what they made me. Another transmission came from Thexcor. Human Commander, we acknowledge our defeat. We will withdraw from all human space. We will pay reparations. We will submit to any terms. Please, no more killing. Blackwood's hand hovered over the fire control. One button press and the Hellfire Lances would finish the Genval fleet. No more threat. No more worry about them returning. Admiral Blackwood, Thexcor's voice continued. We made a terrible mistake. We judged you by your peaceful colonies and thought you weak. We were wrong. But look what you've become in response to our mistake. Look at the weapons you've used, the lines you've crossed. We are not the monsters here anymore. You are. The words hit harder than any weapon. Blackwood looked at the tactical display, at the Genval fleet trying to retreat, at his own ships preparing for the final attack. He thought about the nanoplague, about the black hole weapon, about all the ethical lines humanity had crossed in the name of vengeance. Hold fire, he ordered. His crew looked at him in shock. Sir? His tactical officer asked. I said hold fire. Blackwood opened a channel to the Genval flagship. War Premier Thexcor, you will retreat to your home space. You will not return to any system humanity claims. You will broadcast on all collective channels exactly what happened when you attacked us. And if I ever see a Genval ship near human space again, I will not hesitate next time. Do you understand? Yes, Thexcor replied, relief evident in his voice. Thank you. Don't thank me, Blackwood said. This isn't mercy. This is a warning to every species in the galaxy. We can be peaceful. We prefer to be peaceful. But if you make us go to war, we will show you exactly why we spent 2 centuries trying to forget how. The Genval fleet retreated, leaving the Cronus Nebula filled with wreckage and the dead. Dr. Vasquez's voice came through again. You did the right thing, James. Did I? Blackwood looked at his reflection in the viewport, barely recognizing the man staring back. We used weapons we swore we'd never deploy. We killed without mercy. We became exactly what we were trying to leave behind. But you stopped, Elena said. At the end, when you had the power to completely destroy them, you stopped. That's what makes us human. Not that we can fight, but that we can choose not to. Blackwood wasn't sure if he believed that anymore, but he gave the order for the fleet to return home, leaving the Genval to limp back to their space and spread the word. Humanity was back, and the galaxy would never forget it. 3 months after the Battle of Cronus Nebula, the human fleet arrived at the borders of Genval space, not to invade despite what many on Earth demanded. They came because War Premier Thexcor had sent an unexpected message. We need to talk, all of us, before it's too late. Admiral Blackwood sat across from Thexcor in a neutral space station, a hastily constructed platform in the empty space between their territories. The Genval leader looked different now, smaller somehow, despite his intimidating alien form. You could have destroyed us, Thexcor said. Why didn't you? Because I looked in a mirror and didn't like what I saw, Blackwood replied. Now, why did you call this meeting? We're not interested in your surrender terms. We already gave you those. Thexcor's mandibles clicked nervously, because surrender terms don't matter if we're all dead. He activated a holographic display. This is what's coming. The image showed a sector of space, dozens of star systems going dark one by one, like lights being turned off. Not exploding, not being destroyed by war, just ceasing to exist. We call it the decay, Thexcor explained. It appeared on our far borders 20 years ago. It consumes everything, planets, stars, even the fabric of space itself. It doesn't communicate, doesn't negotiate. It just spreads, leaving nothing behind. Blackwood leaned forward. What does this have to do with your attack on us? We were running, Thexcor admitted. The decay was approaching our core worlds. We needed resources, technology, anything that might help us survive. We've been fighting it for 2 decades, and we're losing. Every weapon we've developed, every tactic we've tried, it simply adapts and keeps coming. So you decided to attack us and take what you needed? Blackwood's voice was hard. You killed 8 million humans because you were scared? Yes, Thexcor said simply. And when we saw your peaceful colonies, we thought you would be easy prey. We thought we could harvest your resources and move on before you even organized a response. We were desperate and stupid. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had joined the delegation, studied the data. These readings don't make sense. The decay isn't just destroying matter, it's erasing information from the universe. That should be impossible according to our understanding of physics. Nothing about the decay follows the rules we understand, Thexcor replied. We've sent scientists, warriors, and diplomats. Nothing comes back. It just keeps spreading, one system at a time. Blackwood stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. Why tell us this now? Why not just retreat further and let it become our problem eventually? Because it already is your problem. Thexcor brought up another display. The decay is moving in multiple directions. One branch is heading toward human space. You have maybe 10 years before it reaches your colonies. 20 before it reaches Earth. The room fell silent. Secretary General Martinez, attending via hologram, spoke first. You want our help. After everything you did, after all the people you killed, you're asking us to save you. No, Thexcor said. I'm asking you to save yourselves. We're already lost. But you have weapons we never imagined. Technologies we didn't know were possible. Your species thinks about warfare in ways we never could. If anyone can stop the decay, it's humans. Blackwood turned back to face the alien. And what do you offer in return? Everything, Thexcor said. All our technology, all our resources, all our knowledge of the decay, and something else. He paused. We're offering our warriors. The Genval who attacked your colonies, the ones who killed your people. They volunteer to serve under human command, to be the first wave against the decay. Let them die trying to fix what they broke. On Earth, the debate exploded across every channel and network. The public was divided sharply. Some saw it as justice, the Genval literally paying with their lives for their crimes. Others saw it as slavery, forcing the aliens to fight humanity's battle. But the loudest voice came from an unexpected source. Sarah Chen's sister, one of the few survivors rescued from New Horizon, gave an interview that went viral across human space. My sister died sending a warning to Earth, she said. She died so we would be ready, so we could fight back. And we did. We hurt them. We made them pay. But Sarah also said in her message, don't let our deaths be meaningless. She looked directly into the camera. If we refuse this alliance, if we let the decay destroy the Genval and then come for us, Then every human who died in this war died for nothing. We would have fought a war, won it, and then lost everything anyway. Is that what we want Sarah's sacrifice to mean? The message reached Dr. Vasquez as she sat in her laboratory, reviewing the decay data. She had spent 3 months trying to convince the council to accept the Genval offer, and 3 months failing. She called Admiral Blackwood on a secure channel. "James, I've been analyzing their data. The decay isn't natural. It's a weapon, or it was a weapon once. Someone created this thing and it got away from them." "That doesn't change anything," Blackwood replied. "Natural or artificial, we need to stop it." "But it means we can stop it," Elena insisted. "Weapons can be countered. We just need to understand how it works." She pulled up her analysis, and to do that we need the Genval. They've been fighting it for 20 years. They have data we don't. And more importantly, they know what doesn't work. Blackwood was quiet for a long moment. "You want to forgive them?" "No," Elena said firmly. "I want to be practical. Forgiveness is about the past. This is about the future. My granddaughter lives on Mars. Your daughter lives on Europa Station. Do we doom them because we can't work with species that wronged us?" The Admiral closed his eyes. "Do you know what the hardest part of command is, Elena? It's not giving orders that get people killed. It's knowing when to put aside your personal feelings for the greater good. So you'll support the Alliance?" "I'll do better than that," Blackwood said. "I'll lead it." 6 months later, the first joint human Genval fleet departed for the decay zone. It was an uneasy alliance. Human and Genval crew members barely spoke to each other. Some humans still wanted revenge. Many Genval were terrified of the species they had awakened. But they worked together, because the alternative was extinction. Admiral Blackwood stood on the bridge of a new flagship, a vessel built with both human and Genval technology. Dr. Vasquez had designed weapons that combined human creativity with Genval power systems. War Premier Thexcor commanded the Genval forces, his warriors eager to atone for their crimes. "This is insane," Blackwood's tactical officer muttered, watching the mixed fleet maneuver. 3 months ago we were killing them. Now we're trusting them to watch our backs." "That's what humans do," Blackwood replied. "We adapt, we change. We work with yesterday's enemies when we have to. It's not pretty and it's not comfortable, but it's how we survive." The fleet approached the edge of the decay zone, where a Genval colony had been. The system was there in the sensors, but wrong somehow, like reality itself was sick. "All ships, battle stations," Blackwood ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." As they crossed into the affected space, sensors began showing impossible readings. A message appeared on every screen simultaneously in every language, as if something was reading their minds. Finally, someone interesting has come to play. The bridge fell silent. The decay wasn't mindless. It was intelligent. And it had been waiting for something that could challenge it. "Well," Blackwood said, sharing a glance with Thexcor's hologram, "at least we won't be bored." The war for survival had begun, and humanity had learned its most important lesson yet. Sometimes the species that attacks you today becomes the ally you need tomorrow. Not because you forgive them, not because you forget what they did, but because the universe doesn't care about your grudges. It only cares whether you're smart enough to survive. As the fleet advanced into the decay, Admiral Blackwood thought about Sarah Chen, about the children in those laboratories, about all the horrors the Genval had inflicted. He thought about the weapons humanity had used in return, the lines they had crossed, the monsters they had become. And then he put all of it aside because there was work to do. The peaceful era of humanity was truly over. The age of survival had begun, and humans had always been very, very good at surviving. Whatever came next, whether they won or lost, at least they would face it together. Not as friends, not as forgiven enemies, but as species who understood the universe's fundamental truth: adapt or die. Humanity had adapted once by choosing peace. Now they were adapting again by choosing to work with those who had wronged them. It wasn't noble, it wasn't satisfying, and it certainly wasn't justice, but it was survival, and in the end, that was what mattered most.